baseball's always been something I've loved. I was out there playing softball in a men's league, and it was competitive. And there was a guy playing center field, and he was wearing what looked like booties. And I was like, what is going on here? I know this is Santa Cruz. We have all these stickers, keep Santa Cruz weird. And it is weird here. But, this is like competitive softball. So you wouldn't put yourself at a disadvantage. And I'm like, why would you wear your booties from surfing to play center field? Well, it turned out he was wearing five fingers, and this was like, the Vibram five fingers. And this was back when like that was first a thing, like 2010-ish. And, I looked into it and I was like really intrigued because as an athlete, even a men's slow pitch athlete, technique is always important. Everything you do, it's a matter of learning to do it better. And so I was like, whoa, it just made sense to me that a lot of the components of a shoe, the modern shoe, are somehow hindering you from your foot moving the way it's naturally intended to move. So that made sense right off the bat. I tried it and fell in love with it. I found myself tearing all the pieces out of my shoes in order to get lower to the ground. And then I realized I couldn't really do that very well in normal footwear. I grabbed some moccasins, like the kind I would get for Christmas from my mom, right? In my stocking or something. And I had some of these old moccasins, and I just ripped the thing out. It was nothing but like the rubber. I ran on West Cliff Drive in moccasins because I couldn't run on the asphalt with bare feet. I wasn't good enough at it, and I wanted to do this thing, so I'd do anything, because I understood that it was better, and something was really different about it. So I did that for a while. Then I was doing, I bought some five fingers, loved those. But that was in the winter, and then spring came along and I'm like, I need sandals. I live in Santa Cruz. But flip-flops, even like a regular pair of flip-flops has a big old arch in it. And then you're grabbing with your toes. Well, and so I kind of went back to where I had started in that time when I was exploring, sort of barefoot minimalist and trying five fingers and things like that. Even Merrill had this shoe, the Trail Glove, when it first came out. That was like 2011, I believe. And it was, I went back to the book I had read, which is Born to Run. Great book. And they were wearing sandals. And so the thing about the sandals is they have to like actually stick onto your foot. So I bought a pair of these sandals from a company I won't name. Maybe their owner possibly was in the book Born to Run. In any case, I was a fan. I'm just a fan of the whole minimalist thing. And then the sandals. And so I started wearing the sandals. And but I was wearing five fingers a lot. I was wearing the Merrill Trail Glove. And then I was wearing these sandals. And more and more, I'm like, I don't need anything around my foot. It was this kind of weird sensation. I remember running up into Wilder Ranch here in Santa Cruz, and you're just like going up the mountain, and I'm like, I don't really need anything. I don't need that much to do what I'm doing. I'd go farther and farther out in the sandals, and I just really loved, like, there's something great about having the air on your feet. So like, I wouldn't want to spend my life with my hands in gloves, but that's essentially what we're doing with anything that's closed footwear. So I just really came to like it, and I was not selling them at this point. It was just me and like my choice for footwear. Ultimately, the product that you're buying, it's not necessarily the price tag. It's what can you do in it? What accomplishments, what experiences do you have? And that's the true value of a product. And then do you want to recreate that? And then all the time it would take for you personally to recreate it. And so it was like worth it. It was worth it because I'm like, here I am, I'm spending hours and hours and hours running like I'd never run before and farther. And I became a runner. I was an athlete who would run to play sports, and that's like what you have to do to, win the soccer ball from somebody else or catch a fly ball around the bases. But in this case, it was, I was running for the joy of running. I was starting to call myself a soul runner, like a soul surfer. You just surf to surf, you run to run. And because of the minimalist footwear, I just felt like my breathing was different and just my whole take on it was different. So it's something I enjoyed. I was doing that for maybe a year and a half, 2 years before I started trying to make them on my own. I'm like, I can do this. It's just a sheet of material. My father-in-law made me a pair of sandals from, he worked at the water department here in town. And I like to say he stole this rubber because it just sounds more exciting. But he worked for them and he stole this, this sheet of rubber that they clamp onto a big pipe to keep it from leaking. And so he brought that home. He went to the hardware store. He bought a punch and some paracord, and we cut out some sandals. And I was in awe of my father-in-law because he knew all the secrets of sandal making. And he crafted some specifically for me. And I took these sandals and I went to Westcliff and I ran in them. They were terrible, just awful. So actually, if I remember correctly, that was my first foray into the sandals pretty early on. Really was like, you know what? So many times in life, I'd been a student most of the time in my life, and I had worked a lot to provide for my family and to get my degrees and all that, but I had never really like tried to start a business. And I'm like, you got to just do it, Josh. You got to give it a shot. And so I did it. And I don't know if it was the smartest decision I've ever made, but it's been a consequential one. And my wife, she's been great. She's begrudgingly supported my insanity and all of this, nuttiness. But it's fun. It provides a lot of challenge and all kinds of problems to solve all the time. And I hope someday at the end of the day, we're more successful than we are right now. But we've come a long way. So that's kind of what got me making the sandals. I just really ended up enjoying it. And so they were originally for me, and then I'm like, I need to try and do this. Like, this is how things start. I wanted to be in on this minimalist footwear sort of explosion at the time. And that's even another topic, but I think that like a lot of ideas when they start, sometimes they're half baked, and maybe they hit the market and you see a lot of weird stuff at first. And there were a lot of like weird, funky takes, but then after a while and you get past the initial like sugar rush, like solid offerings start showing up. And I think that we're seeing, like, especially in, the different sandals and all that and footwear, there's still a lot of people out there doing it, and the offerings are getting better and better. And I know ours have gotten a ton better in the last, 8 or 9 years now. I remember like two things stick out. I don't know why I remember these things, but VH1, Metallica, on Behind the Music, they said, we're just fans of heavy metal. So I'm just a fan of the minimalist footwear, minimalist running, and the whole idea. So I've just like, I would love to see these products get as good as possible, and I would love to. I want to like really push the limits of what you can do in a sandal, and I want people to have like a different idea of it. And then the other one was like, is it Phil Knight? Is it Phil Knight? Yeah, from Nike. And I remember when I was a kid, I was watching him on, I must have been a weird kid. He was like on 2020 with like Hugh Downs or something. And he was talking about his shoes, and they're like, well, what are you going to do next, Phil? And it's like, well, there's always something you could do, is what he said. That was his answer. And there's always some little improvement that could be made. And so when I first started looking at the sandals, it's like, sure, you could tie it to your foot, but I feel like we've put a man on the moon. I think we can make a sandal that's like a little more accessible and sticks with your foot a little better. And that's kind of been my whole thing. And I think since the beginning, I've always been constrained by, and this is how it goes when you're starting a business. I had a shelf and a sewing machine and another shelf and I had a tarp that was like 10 feet by 10 feet. And to make the first pair, or the first ones that I sold, I bought a sheet of Vibram Morflex, which is a sewing material I really like, and we still use in the Cruisers and Chargers and Super Browns. But I used that sheet, and I made like 10 pairs of sandals, and I charged people $20 a piece. I just made them for my friends. And then I used that money and I got some more. And that's all I've been doing. So the thing is, when you start out like that, all you have access to things that are off the shelf. And that's a real challenge, because like the first buckle, well, I called it the no sweat lacing system. So we went from just a strap that was wrapped around your foot that was controlled by like the same buckle you would put on a backpack, a 3/4 inch strap. And you feed everything through that, and the tension holds it. And so it works, you can do it. But I wanted it to be really easy. I wanted it to be like you just slip your foot in and you Velcro it and you go, because like that's how everything is. And so I was at Wilder Ranch again, and there was a backpack buckle, a sternum strap adjuster. So it was meant to have like a 1-inch piece of webbing on one side, and then a little slot on the inside, and then you could tighten it across your chest. Well, I took that, it was in the dirt there in the parking lot, and I grabbed it and I was looking at it and I'm like, this is what I need, except, for the top of the foot. But I need it smaller. So we could find one that was 3/4 by 3/4, which basically fit the material. But in order to get one made, like custom to our material, that's like $3,000 for a mold, And so I didn't have that money. So I had to save up that year. In the meantime, we had to use that off the shelf product, and we'd have to clip it down, like modify each one to make it fit. And so you're kind of constrained by what you can do to manipulate stuff that already exists, until you have enough money to then take your design and then your idea and translate it into an actual part. And that's been a long process. But so you're really stuck with, and that's just one aspect of the sandal. Now it's like, well, how can you improve the other parts all the way around the sandal? And then once you've done that, it was just like kind of tackling one problem after another. And so that's kind of been the approach. There's always some new thing or some way to improve it.